Hello! Here we are again. Animal RN, Robyn Kesnow, the RVT, Registered Veterinary Technician with TLC, Tender Loving Care. So last month, I'm just going to start right away on time out of respect for everybody's time. Last month we talked about, we answered the questions from 25 people who are interested in or actively building up an animal hospice business. That call went really well. I got lots of feedback. We kept it pretty broad. And then the follow-up to that was to send out a survey looking for what your questions were from there. What more information did you want in order to make sure that you're getting what you need? Because there's definitely a lot to doing this. There's caring for the actual animals. There's managing your relationships with the veterinary team. There is the business side of things, making sure that you can afford to keep doing this. Even if you're a nonprofit, that doesn't mean that money isn't happening somewhere. Okay, so today we are going to continue by going through those survey results. And I want to give a little bit of a preview. So our next month's call, or next call, because actually one of the requests I had that we'll be talking about again, taking a poll offline, is how many people are interested in the actual medicine that happens. So I had a couple specific requests around oncology, and I put together a couple of resources that I want to just get out there right away. If that is helpful to you, we're going to be doing that on the next on-air. Right now it's scheduled to be once a month. If you want it sooner than that, just let me know. Give me a shout out, reach back here, Google+, Facebook, let me know, and we'll see what we can do to make that happen. We want to definitely get you the information as quickly as you can use it, but I know that life happens too. So next month we've got oncology. We're talking about who's who in the veterinary world, who to pay attention to around oncology. We're talking about pain as it relates to oncology, not just pain management in general and the basics, but really going deeper on cancer pain and what to do about that and the different types, how to assess it, and what you can know about it just based on the different types of cancer. We brought in some experts, so I've got some people, I've got some research and some books to share with you that you can utilize as you're doing your animal hospice work, caring for your animals, and building up your team, which is a perfect segue to those survey results. The top two results in the survey there were all around building your team. So the questions around team building were, do you need help and what priority is getting help on building a team as someone outside a veterinary clinic looking to start up and build your own team that you can work with to manage animal hospice care and implement the plans. The other question that was highly ranked was team building as it comes from inside the veterinary clinic. So if I'm an employee of a veterinary clinic or an owner of a veterinary clinic, how do I build up a team for hospice? Because the one thing we all seem to know, regardless of where we're at in our animal hospice journey and our service work, is that it takes a team. So just like last time, I put my notes over here. Bear with me as I check in with them. We're just going to start right off the bat here. So building a team. The first thing about your team is who do you need on your team? The next thing that we're going to need to know besides who we want to have on our team is how that team is going to interact. So if I worked for a company, I would have a hierarchy or a chain of command that I could work with. And this is going to be true for your hospice team, especially if you yourself, whoever's putting this together, is not a DVM or a VMD, a veterinarian. You're going to need to have this set up so that people understand where they fall. Who's communicating with the client? What are they talking about? And by client, I mean the pet parent. Beyond that, who is communicating with the veterinarian? And by the way, they probably don't want to hear from a ton of people that in a way that's irrelevant. They want to keep it short, they want to keep it simple, they've got lots of other clients, they've got lots of other pets that need their attention, so we want to support them in a way that is supportive rather than being a burden on them, okay? And then, so who, what chain of command? Communication. By what means are we going to communicate? Is it by phone, text, email? Are we going to be speaking veterinary language? Do we need to increase our jargon and make sure that our language is up to speed so that the veterinarians are happy speaking their own language? Or are you going to go the other way, where you choose to make sure that everyone is communicating with pretty much layman type terms, because I'll tell you that can be one of the hugest issues with communication is the barrier that comes up between those two. And so someone somewhere in there has to act as a translator if not everybody is on the same page. Okay, so then from that we have where to find your team members. Where are you going to find these people? You know, I don't know about you, but when I started this business, it was me just running around desperately searching for people on the internet, desperately banging on doors, local veterinarians, asking them to help me and to support the animals that I was trying to care for, talking to people's regular veterinarians and understanding that not all the things we needed from them in the animal hospice services were within their scope. So where are you going to find these people? And then the last thing, well, it's not really the last thing that we can get in today before we go on to maybe a bigger, more in-depth another time, is how do you get them to join the team? How do you get them to do it? It's the whole what's in it for them. Why would they work with you? Why would they not do it on their own? What other objections might they have, and how can you answer those to get them to be a part of this hospice team so that you guys can build up and support the animals in your area? Okay, so let's get started. We had a couple other people join us. Hello. Okay, so first off, that hierarchy, imagine that company chain of command, so to speak. If you have the owner, CEO, founder, then you have your chief financial officer, you have your operating officers, you have VPs of various departments like marketing, customer relations, you have somebody managing HR. So if we take that chart and just erase all those titles so that we can put on our own, who are you and where do you fall? The first thing is to identify yourself and your place in this hospice plan, this committee, this team. Because we don't know where we stand, we don't know how other people will fit in with us. So for example, I'll use myself, it's what I have to go on, my own experiences and opinions. So as an RVT in California, there's certain rules about what I can and cannot do. And so that really puts me very clearly in a certain place on this hierarchy. I have great talents personally in the skills of communicating with pet parents. I can slow down my usually fast pace. I can relate with them. I can share with them and communicate in a way where they can hear me. I can honor who they are. We spoke last time about the DISC, Room Full of Referrals, that book, using it specifically to identify people's likely position on the DISC assessment, and then being able to relate to them in a way that they can really hear what you're saying. There's all kinds of tricks around that too. We're not trying to be tricky, we're just trying to communicate with people in a way they can hear. Right? So if somebody is talking to me and they're very scientific and they want the numbers and they want the research, and I've read the abstract on the study, but I haven't gone in depth. I only read enough that I am satisfied based on the credibility of the research, the researcher, and trusting that information. This person might need more than that. So knowing and recognizing that and being able to give them access to that study and let them read through it and empower them to open it up for a dialogue. So these are the kinds of things that you have to know where you stand first. One of my strengths is client communication. So I make sure that my position is one that touches our clients, our families that we work with. And again, for the nonprofit people, don't worry about the term clients. Just because money isn't changing hands in the very traditional sense, it absolutely has to move through here in order for us to have the resources to care for the animals. So don't think that you're excluded, per se, okay? So number one, where do you stand? What are your strengths, whether that's limited by your title, whether it's expanded by your title, what your personal skill sets are, and where you want to spend your time. You know, when I worked in the emergency clinic, I could have done any number of tasks. I could have been somebody that really leaned towards surgery and got some extra credentials in that arena. I could have been somebody who chose to lean towards some of the other certifications. I could have leaned out of the emergency clinic and expanded on my dental. So those of you that know me know I love dentistry for some reason in animals. So I could have gone any of those ways. But the ways that I chose to go are ways that within my own profession, even though I say I love all of it, really sit and spend some time with what pieces are you particularly skilled at, and are your passions? And that will help you define where you are in this hierarchy. Okay, so we've got our map. We have clearly mapped out where we stand. Then from there we can build out. And if you're not a DVM, that is going to be the first thing you add to this chart, this hierarchy. Think about human hospice. Sorry, we're all the same, right? Beings. Think about human hospice. Every hospice team in human hospice is overseen, and they change where they put this person on their little chart pending the company, but they're all overseen by a medical director. In our case, that's going to be the veterinarian. We absolutely want to have a veterinarian on board. This veterinarian can be the only veterinarian sometimes, or they might be one of many, which leads to the next position on our little chart here. So we've got ourselves clearly defined. We have a veterinarian somewhere on here, whether that's going to be the only one who is the overseeing veterinarian, or whether it's one of many. Our many are going to be our specialists. Now this is where our chart gets a little fun. So you are who you are, and this will be the same no matter what. As you move through, no matter who you work with, that's where you sit, that's where you stand. Your veterinarian, that will be where you sit, that will be where they stand. And then we have to go case by case. However, the general diagram, the names change, but the diagram stays the same. Okay? So your specialist could be a cardiologist. I love having an internist available. I believe that internists have such a depth of knowledge and a breadth of knowledge that can be really helpful. They've seen so much stuff that goes kind of crazy in the body that they have experiences that as these animals are getting older than they might have before when we were euthanizing earlier in life, when we didn't have the great food and the great medicine we do now to allow these bodies to age the way they are. Some of the ways that different organs, different systems play with each other, an internist can recognize what's going on and how to manage that, even if it's not cure it, in a way that no other doctor can do. So I really love, internist is one of my keys. That's definitely an asterisk veterinary specialist for me. Okay, so cardiologist, internist, holistic veterinarian. I put them into the specialty category because sometimes, even though they say they're integrated, sometimes it's nice to have multiple veterinarians and somebody who's really up that alley of holistic veterinary care. And of course, even within holistic, you might have more than one. I know here locally, we have a few veterinarians that say that they're holistic. One of them, for example, is really good at the TCM, the traditional Chinese medicine. The acupuncture, the Chinese herbs are right up her alley. She really knows what she's doing in that arena and is wonderful and quick and efficient and caring, and she's perfect to fill that role. On the other hand, even though that woman does do homeopathy, there's another veterinarian in town that I feel is stronger with homeopathy. Her practice is more geared towards homeopathy. It doesn't take her the same amount of time and research to come up with a remedy for these animals because it's really right in her wheelhouse, and it's what she does. So even within holistic veterinarians, if you consider them a specialty, you might have some key personnel. I love acupuncture for its benefits on mobility and pain management, which is very relevant to a senior baby, especially dogs and cats and animals that have been more mobile. Other specialty veterinarians that might come up, oncology. If you live in an area where you don't have an oncologist, for one, next time around, we're going to be talking about oncology. I've got some great resources for you so that even via distance, your veterinarian as a part of your team can coordinate with some veterinary oncologists. So I've got some great people, books, and resources for you our next go-around. In the meantime, a lot of times an internist in the local community will kind of step into that role. Well, where perhaps they're not officially and technically an oncologist, they have a lot of experience because somebody always will. Cancer happens, unfortunately. Okay, so what other things I put up there? Oh, you know, I did put up there a general practitioner. Sometimes the closest vet isn't the vet of choice for the family, but being closer to home can be important. And then we call those, well, I call those a general practitioner. So that way we can get the immediate needs met, and there's a place for them because geography matters in hospice. The further away you are from professional help, the more systems you have to have in place to protect you. We don't want animals in pain. It's the #1 rule. And if something were to happen in the middle of the night, or in the middle of the day for that matter, that distance, that time, it's going to add up. It matters. Let me put it this way. If an animal is crying out in pain, not to mention other symptoms of pain, but they're literally crying out truly in pain, not in some level of dysphoria or something, how would you feel if that was going on for 45 minutes? Because that's how far away you are from the veterinary clinic. And that's assuming you heard the noise and you got immediately in the car. So having a local person, no matter whether or not they're normally a part of that family's team, is very important. That also brings up mobile. I love to have a mobile veterinarian at my disposal. And if there isn't any mobile veterinarian in your area, and another time we can talk about how to get veterinarians to support you with mobile services. Some people believe that a mobile veterinarian needs to be available 24/7, 7 days a week, or they can't do it. I completely disagree. Good hospice planning can set it up so the veterinarian can work off of a schedule. They don't have to have urgent call hours, although how cool would it be if there was a couple of them and they were available on a more urgent call basis. Now, good planning, good anticipation, the actual hospice plan, which again, I've done a couple talks on that, happy to reiterate those anytime. Some of them are available from IAA HPC when I taught in the past. Having that hospice plan is key. And what part that veterinarian plays in that plan will determine what else you need. There are pain management specialists, so they're called I believe they call them a diplomat. Those people know pain management better than anyone else. Believe me, I first thought that I could just count on people who were really good veterinarians for pain management. And the more I did animal hospice, and that #1 rule being absolute comfort care, the more I realized that pain management is insane and complicated and deep, and it can go off-label, and things that as an RVT I cannot do and don't want to do. I began taking some continuing education units towards a credential, the IVAPM, we talked about them last time. They're Pain Management Association. They have a credential now available to licensed technicians. And I started taking those courses and really learning more about pain management. And even though I have no intention personally of getting that credential, let me tell you, those people who have taken that, those techs, know more about pain management than some veterinarians. And I don't say that to discount the veterinarians, but just to say that pain management is constantly changing. Pharmacies, the chemistry of pain management is changing all the time. And then add that in with the individual biodynamic being that is the animal in front of you. Add in acupuncture, add in a little rehab. Again, another specialist. Put all these things together, and every case is different. So it really requires a depth of knowledge that is way above and beyond. Another specialty arena that is very similar to pain management in the sense that you would think just anybody could help you. But if we could find you somebody for your team that's a specialist, it would really make your team function that much better. And that's someone who works around nutrition. Now, for me, I have a very strong opinion. It's not just about the letters after the name. There, in the past, hasn't been nutrition titles, licenses available, and as they've been coming available over the last few years, just like we know with any other credential, it's a minimum requirement being met. And there are people without those letters after their name that know so much more. UC Davis, for example, has I don't know if they call it a list, but essentially you can subscribe as a veterinarian and get access to the current research going on to make sure that you've got the best information on nutrition. And the other big variable here, and another reason to go straight to the top, regardless of the letters after the name on this particular subject, is let's think about what we're doing. We're doing animal hospice. GI issues are one of the #1 problems in geriatric care. Either they stop eating, which changes their life in a negative way, puts a spin on things that we may or may not be able to control, but what a shame would it be if a little bit of nutrition and guidance could shift that for us. In addition to that, You have GI upset, #1 complaint, lack of mobility and diarrhea or incontinence, bowel or bladder. So these things are all related, and then add that to what we already know about nutrition, which is what a vital role it plays in our overall health. And then our poor guys at Davis, we have this wonderful research from them and other places as well. And then we give them these animals whose bodies aren't functioning at 100%. So the liver isn't filtering the way it's supposed to. The kidneys aren't diuresing like they're supposed to. Nothing is happening the way it's supposed to. So then we've got to add in that factor, and without drawing blood every 2 minutes, we've got to figure out how to keep these guys getting the nutrients they need and understanding that those needs are changing all the time. So that's why I like to have the nutritionist as one of my, again, starred people as a favorite that I want to have on the team. Okay, so we've got ourselves clearly where we go. We've got our overseeing veterinarian, whether that is one of many or just a single overseeing veterinarian. We've got our specialists that really range in what they do. The next category, again, you're drawing this on a hierarchy, thinking about communicating. Who talks to who and when and what and where. We don't want to make the mistake the human industry made years ago and not be talking to each other and having cases go awry because the different pieces of this vehicle aren't talking. I like to think of a bicycle wheel with the hub at the center. You've got the wheel around the outside and all the different spokes. So we need all these things to be working in line together, right? You've got pressure on the bottom few spokes. There's also pressure on the top few spokes, and yet these guys on the side are getting a break. The same is true for the system when it's set up well, this hierarchy. Okay, next, support services. So these people may or may not be licensed depending on who you can find, depending on the laws in your state. My support services is where I include people like massage, people who do massage. For me, it's for dogs and cats. Some people do animal hospice with other animals. If there is a certification available, you always want to be aware of that. And certainly, if there's laws around practicing medicine without a license, we know that the dental industry, both equine and small animal, has really taken a hit, and that's rightfully so. There is a line. Find out where yours is drawn, and make sure that the people on your team are licensed as they should be for your area. Okay, so we've got animal massage. We've got chiropractic. We've got, I sometimes put acupuncture in here. A lot of times I bump that one up to the veterinary category, even though chiropractors may or may not be licensed, may or not be veterinarians. They're always overseen by a veterinarian. Since we have one on the team, this can work out if we spin everything and make sure it's working. The cogs are moving all together, right? Okay, so we got massage. I'll put Reiki in this category. Reiki may seem like something that's a little out there for those of you that are very more traditional in your medical approach. In animal hospice, it's come in very handy. It's been something a lot of people that weren't open to it their animals' entire lives will find themselves open to it. It's something that you can teach pet parents to do themselves. So Reiki is a service that I put in there as the support service. It's a possibility. Other support services. Rehab, so CCRPs, places that run indoor dog swimming facilities. I especially love it if they can take cats. It's pretty rare that a cat would have benefit, well, not have benefit, that a cat would want to swim in a way that isn't so stressful on them, that's not worth the benefits of it. However, when you do have that, it's nice to be able to take them somewhere where they can learn, even if they go home and create their own system in their backyard or in their bathtub. So swimming, transportation services. We have found, and this is over years, this goes back to Dr. Tammy Shearer, the first brick-and-mortar animal hospice facility way back when. This goes back to Dr. Eric, all of these people. Animal hospice really happens at home. It becomes less and less feasible to take the animals to the clinic. Now, perhaps because of your team, everybody's in a brick and mortar, we need to keep the animal coming in as long as possible. At some point, that will shift. If we truly get towards closer and closer to natural passings and really doing this more and more often, you'll see there's a place, if they can get that far in their life, where it's no longer appropriate to bring them in, and that's where we need our mobile veterinarians to help us out, our mobile services. In the meantime, having someone that can help with transportation can be incredibly helpful on your team. It's another one of those starred categories for me. Now, for me at Animal RN, we provide transportation services. So we fill in multiple roles on our own little graph here that we've come up with. Being able to take an elderly animal to the vet while someone is at work and letting the vet and the pet parent talk by phone and get things dialed in, and just being able to provide that service can really take a burden off the family. So transportation services is something that I don't think should be overlooked. It kind of came up for me by accident because it's something that we offered in addition to our pet sitting and our wellness walks, and it's now become invaluable. That same service can also be helpful after an animal has passed. Not every town has a pet funeral home or crematorium that offers that service, so that's another need that could be filled, and it is a need. We're not selling stuff to people, we're helping them with real issues. Okay, so then after we have that, let me make sure I'm not missing anything on that list, then we have what I call our individual services. So we've got ourselves square. We've got our overseeing veterinarian. We've got our specialist area where we have our licensed professionals. We have our support area that may or may not have licenses depending on the area. And now we're going to get into our individual services. Now these are things that really vary by client, and this is, I think, one of the funnest parts of building out this team. Because you might have 5 or 6 people in each of these little categories as you go through and you work this and you're supporting people with animal hospice services. Groomers, boarding facilities, pet sitters. So these are people where the family might have their own resources, and then as a part of their hospice team, we figure out how they fit in this communication hierarchy and give them any training they need. And if they don't have the training they need and aren't willing to get it, we have to figure out how to make it okay that we replace them with someone that we know that is willing to do that. So getting continuing education around animal hospice is something I always talk to people about. If you're going to work with your current pet sitter, you want to make sure that they know what they're looking for. Those subtle changes, those subtle little shifts. You're just going out for dinner, it's only a few hours, and a lot can happen in that time. And I can't tell you how many times, you might have already had this experience already, people think something just happened overnight. And the reality is, it's been happening all along. It's been happening in these small little phases, in these small little steps, and in these moments, and the people aren't noticing because they don't know what to look for. So pet sitters, groomers, boarding facilities, dog trainers even have been helpful in shifting behaviors. So animals that have a new medication schedule, diuresis, sub-Q fluids, prophylactic medication. Dog trainers can sometimes be helpful in getting the animals comfortable with this new routine and, to be honest, training the people on this new routine. Okay, so we've got our system pretty well set up. So that's who we want on our team. So we just spent about 20 minutes, half an hour, specifically on the who. We didn't even talk yet about now what do we do with that chain of command? How do we get other people to accept where we think they should be on this, or do we let them tell us where they go? How do we then get to communicate with each other? By what method tactically? In what language? How frequently? We haven't even gotten to where am I going to find all these people and how am I going to get them to want to be a part of my team? So just the who is a big deal and can play a big role. One of the areas that I didn't really get into here, but I definitely want to mention, is to consider some of the other services that could be helpful but are definitely specific. And paying attention to the families you're serving would be relevant. So for example, social workers or people that have skills in that arena. Again, appropriate licenses where relevant. Chaplaincy. You know, I have a family that I'm working with right now. We had to find her childhood rabbi because that's who she wanted to work with. So if we're going to put ourselves in a position where we're in charge of setting up this team, it's going to be important that we're willing to reach outside of our own network and our own resources and be able to get people what they need to feel comfortable. And then, how do you get them to get on board? Especially in that particular case, the woman now lives at least 20 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes with traffic, away from where her childhood rabbi lives. So how are they going to support each other? That was actually a really nice story. He is willing to, by the way, and has been wonderful for her. Okay, moving on from there. Chain of command. If in doubt, the veterinarian is at the top of the food chain. And that, more than anything else, has to do with legal stuff. You know, until you meet somebody, you don't know their integrity. And not just their integrity, but their depth of knowledge. So for me, as an RVT who runs Animal RN, it's just my personality type, and it's lucky, to be honest, that I have the type that I have. I have a huge respect for where the line is drawn on practicing medicine without a license. My job is to get people to the vet. Sometimes they come to me because they're trying to not go to the vet, and that's not going to work for me. I need the veterinarian to be involved in these animals' lives. I believe that so strongly that I will walk away. I will not take their money if it's a business thing. I won't help them unless they're working with either their own veterinarian or one of mine. And not that they're my veterinarians, but, you know, people I've built a relationship with. So, number one, always, 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 we have to consider that the veterinarian is the only one on all of this team who can practice medicine. And it's really important that that be honored. Because you want to talk about how do I get them to be a part of my team? Number one is to establish and constantly reaffirm that trust and that integrity. Find where you draw the line. Find where they draw the line. If there's a difference, we need to bridge that gap. And I'm a member of BNI, Referral Institute, I'm a student of theirs, and they talk about levels of relationship. And that if I think you and I are very close and you think we are not so close, by default, we are at the lower frequency. Okay? So the same is true with trust. If you're working with a veterinarian and you're bringing them on board, or they're bringing you on board, as the case may be, doesn't really matter. This is not a power trip. It's all about the animals. Wherever the lowest level of trust is where that relationship falls. For me, I'm a spiritual person. I've taken a lot from some great mentors in my life that have taught me a few things. And one of the things that I particularly find useful is meeting people where they're at. I use this in my judgment, trying to not have judgment on people as well, particularly around spirituality and choices around euthanizing or not, or when, and how they choose to handle the remains of their animal. So by meeting this veterinarian where he's at, with where he draws the line on practicing medicine, even if I know legally I can do so much more, if that veterinarian is comfortable with the line right here, then that's where the line goes. And over time, perhaps I can build up from there. But the veterinarian is the one whose license is on the line. The veterinarian is the one who is the medical director of all of what we do. Anything that we do, even though so often I'm not even using my license, I'm doing something a neighbor would do for a friend and just keeping somebody company. Sometimes I'm just talking to people and letting them get out how they feel about the peer pressure to euthanize or not, or medicate or not. And none of it has anything to do with me practicing medicine or utilizing my license as a registered veterinary technician. It doesn't matter what my actual task is. My job is to always honor the animal, make sure they're never in pain, and absolutely follow the legal aspects, the letter of the law about what I'm legally allowed to do or not with my license, and then I put in this extra layer above and beyond that to make sure if I want to build a team, I've got to be a cohesive member of that team. It starts with me. I'm the one that knows this whole system and how it works. So it's my responsibility, even if it means I need to step it down a notch and allow that person or that veterinarian to say and do what they trust and what they feel. And then by showing up consistently, doing a good job, honoring the boundaries that are set, pushing to get those boundaries set, from there we can build a great working relationship. So the number one in what I'm going to do with this little chart that I've built for myself is as I identify people who already have a need. So for me, I've been doing this for 7 years now, actually longer than that, 7 years-ish. And over that period of time, I now have multiple veterinarians that call on us to come in and help with families. We also call in and ask for the support of multiple veterinarians. And yet I'm still almost every week meeting someone in the community who works with a veterinarian that I've not worked with before. And so I'm constantly reminded that as much as, you know, in 7 years I really got a handle on this stuff, it's the veterinarian's case. It's his patient. And it's important for me to remember that. Dr. Nancy Kay, we talked about her a little bit last time, wrote a book called Speaking for Spot. She has another book out now too. From that first book, Speaking for Spot, besides the language in the book that talks to veterinarians about how they might operate themselves in communications with their clients, besides that, they're also talking about, okay, hello client, as you come into the veterinary clinic with your internet research, let's be wise about how we talk to this guy. This guy went to school, he's well credentialed, he is an expert. This guy, veterinarians are amazing. They can feel an animal and detect what's wrong without any imaging or knowing what blood work to do. I mean, sometimes on the consumer side, it feels like they're just touch and feel and pet them a little bit and then sell you something. And the reality is what they're trying to sell you is directly tied to what they felt. And so we've got to honor that. So Dr. Nancy Kay has some great blog articles on her Speaking for Spot blog. She has some great chapters in that book that are all around communicating. Take that same information as though you were the client, the pet parent, although you're instead trying to be a coordinator, a partner. Maybe you would say that you're trying to be a member of their team. And they didn't seek out to build the team. You're the one trying to build the team. But if we come at them with the information in a way that is more respectful and follow Dr. Nancy Kay's guidance on how to communicate with our veterinarian to help them be open to what we're suggesting and to make sure that we're staying open to where they're at and what they're comfortable with. So that's how I kind of start at building this team. All right, so we've got that part kind of dialed down. Where do you find these people? So number one way that I find the people is, well, it might be different for me than you. For me, it almost always starts with a pet. So often, the animals that we work with are our pet sitting families. We've been pet sitting them for years, and now as they get older, their situation is changing, so we shift into our medical role, and we're bringing in the veterinarian. And it's interesting because I wonder, you can't know what people would have done in the past or what they would do in the future. You can only know the moment, right, what we're actively doing. And sometimes these people, I don't think they would be calling the vet if we weren't there kind of talking to them about why what's going on isn't acceptable. Why just saying, oh, it's old age isn't actually good for their pet. And so it's interesting to me, I'm working on collecting some data to see, it's going to be subjective for sure, but trying to see if these people would be going into the veterinarian if we weren't there talking to them. Because that might be another way to talk to the veterinarians about the value of working with someone like you. Okay, so for us, we know the animals are already in some other capacity because we are one of the support services and we're connected to this circle. We just happen to fill more than one spot. Then we can move forward from there and build the team for that specific animal. So we always start with people's own veterinarian. If they already have a veterinarian they love, they're new at working with them, or excuse me, they have years of working with them, they're not new with them, they already have an established relationship. So that veterinarian is going to respect what that client wants for their pet. They're going to really hear what they want for that family because they have a history together. And none of this is going to be coming out of left field, right? So that's one way to find your team members, is that they fall into your lap because they happen to already be the veterinarian that sees that animal on a regular basis, and you just start team building through that one case, so to speak. I hate to use words like that, but just to keep it simple and clear, because I know we have people watching in different positions, you work together on a case is one way to recruit for your team. And that first experience, you can then follow up with good follow-up. I'm so grateful for Referral Institute and BNI for teaching me how to follow up appropriately, so that you can then really get them more involved in the team rather than just every time a case comes up. Okay? So that's one way. Another way is to find out directly. I have found that within the veterinary community, oncology, cancer, often has a connection to animal hospice. So by connecting with the local oncologists or those internists who really kind of specialize in that arena, who end up being the local guy you see for that, by connecting with them, it might take a while, and I might have to have some really good, clear follow-up, making sure I stay top of mind. I don't want to bother them. I don't want to take up a bunch of time in their day. But by using my DISC assessment, again, that room full of referrals training, I can figure out how that veterinarian would like to be worked with. From there, I can get them on my team by just staying top of mind, and one day, it never fails, they'll say, oh, this family, I've been trying to get them to euthanize, they're not ready yet. And they send me out to support, whether it's to give them an evening off, whether it's to go do a quick once-over on the eyes. Maybe they've been coming in for Doppler readings. We can go out and do that for them at home. Even if you're not an RVT or a pet sitting company, you can find your tie-in. And if you stay top of mind with somebody, this is just good referral training. It actually has very little to do with the animal hospice training. It's just good vendor-client relationship. These guys are a vendor as a service that I offer, right? And the reality is that I might be a vendor of a service they offer. One of the biggest things with all of this is getting over who's on top of the food chain. The only reason why we have this graph that we have, this layout, this hierarchy, is for the purpose of communication. We want to communicate with each other and communicate with the client. So how else can you find these people? They're already in your pipeline, you're working with them. Say an animal chaplain might have somebody that comes to service with them, that they've been doing the blessing of the animals periodically. They're a part of their life in some way, and so you might find them that way. When you cross paths because you have a mutual animal that you both care for in your own ways. Another way would be to proactively seek out this relationship. Ask for introductions and putting yourself top of mind, keeping yourself present in a way that isn't too obnoxious. You've got to find the way that's right for you. I can definitely go into the strategies that I particularly use, but I guarantee you my strategies may not be yours. So that additional training on how to do that in sales and referrals and that part of business training is probably where to go get that information so that you can find your own style. Another place that you can find these people, another specialty. So besides oncology, holistic medicine oftentimes has people who are more open to animal hospice and to making sure that we're not euthanizing too early. They're open to treatments and different types of diagnostics. You know, I didn't, in one of my own experiences, I reached a point with one of my dogs where I didn't want him to be poked at anymore. No more ultrasounds, no more needle aspirates, no more. And yet I was totally comfortable with muscle testing. I was totally comfortable with a bit of energy work. And so the traditional Chinese medicine and homeopathy and some of these not so traditional forms of diagnostics, I don't even know if you can technically use that term, fit better for me because I was willing to do those. You know, when you reach that point where you're doing palliative care, and you're not worried about fixing the problem, there's a lot to be done to assess and maintain quality of life, right? And that's where a lot of this team kind of kicks in. So another key specialty area and a person I would seek out to find those relationships is on the holistic side of things. And that could be your traditional Chinese medicine, it could be acupuncturist exclusively, it could be a chiropractor. I would prefer that they also be a veterinarian for the sake of frequency of client visits or having a really good system to where they have veterinary oversight, again, making sure the team is operating legally. And then the other one just being those homeopathy type doctors, people that do things along that arena, a little bit more on the alchemy side. Okay, so those are some of my favorite where to find these people. Now, how do you bring them on board? So number one tip, we've already kind of brushed on it, and I'm not going to go into full detail here, is having that training around how to nurture a relationship. So for me, I get it from Referral Institute as a Referrals for Life client. That is one way that you can do it. Referral training, it's not even truly a referral. So there's other ways to learn how to nurture relationships. For some people that work in the social fields, our social workers, our marriage and family therapists, our counselors in that arena have some training available as well. So seeking out that relationship building training is huge. Some people have this stuff come naturally to them, and if you're one of them, then you're not going to need that training. However, you want to actually make sure you're taking the action. That's probably one of the things that was huge for me. I have some natural skills, but taking the actual action has taken me a little longer. We all need a little accountability in our lives. Okay, and then outside of having that training to learn how to build these relationships and how to keep things going, one of the things, and it's so old school, and I almost don't like it, but it's the, what do they say, WIIFM, what's in it for me? It's true. People want to know what's in it for them. So, for example, I have a particular veterinarian in mind who I really wanted to be a part of my team. He was somebody who's mobile. His clients love him. There's something about the way this man works, whether he's doing a in-home euthanasia or whether he's coming out on a hospice consultation. He only does hospice and euthanasia. He does no other services, which is another reason I loved him. So he has his euthanasia, and then it's on the hospice side, it's almost always around prescription management because he works with people like me, whether they're veterinary technicians, whether they are pet sitters or groomers or dog walkers, to kind of have them be his eyes and ears. And so then he'll come in and help with the prescriptions to make sure that, is there any chemistry we need to be playing with to make sure our pain is managed? Is there any referrals we need to be giving to the acupuncturist, the rehab, making sure that if we give a prescription for swimming, the insurance will kick in and cover it, so long as it's prescribed by the doctor. So that's the role he kind of takes on. And I wanted this guy on my team. I wanted him to be somebody that would refer to me because obviously he's dealing with the people I would love to serve, I would love the honor to work with. And on the other hand, I knew that I was going to be working with people that would benefit from him. And I don't know how many people you know that have that specific of a niche, but that particular niche, you have very high turnover. Your clients always die. And it's sad, and it wears on our hearts. And I say that very light, and yet it's real, it is serious stuff, and it will weigh on you. And so I wanted to figure out how to get this guy to not burn out and to keep going, and not only keep going, but maybe even take on more as I injected myself into the world. Now, the strategy that I used, I was doing my relationship building, all this stuff, and it wasn't really moving the needle. So I sat down and I thought about, what's in it for me? Okay, what does he want? And so my next few conversations, and those relationship building conversations, were specifically research for me. I wanted to find out what was his motivator. And I found out he had two. Number one, he wanted to make a profit in business. He wasn't trying to get rich off anybody, but because this is such big heart work, he figured out that traveling to exotic places for a month at a time helps him feel better and gets him right back at work feeling refreshed and able to love on these animals at this crazy time of life. And that costs a certain amount of money. Plus, we live in an area where cost of living is pretty high. So he needed to figure out how to make sure his business was making a profit. He could not drop his rates and emotionally continue to do the work. Okay, no problem. So the man has figured out his pricing. Make sure he gets paid his pricing without question. Okay, that's number one. The other piece that I figured out was his kind of what's in it for me, is he really, really has a huge passion for the animals. He is absolutely on board with the absolute comfort care, and he cares about client compliance. And what I mean by that, for if you are a client listening, I'm sorry, client compliance is a term that we use in the veterinary clinic, and basically it means if we suggest that you need this supplement or this medication, and we send it home with you, and you don't give it, then you're not complying as a client. On the other hand, if this doctor knows that this supplement could change this dog's life, and you're not giving it, it breaks his heart. But if we can increase how many of his clients and how frequently they executed on the treatment he prescribed, then he felt better and felt more rewarded in work. So I took those two things, get the man paid what he says he charges, no arguing, and increasing his clients listening to the advice he gave, because when he had a higher level of success with keeping the animals comfortable, he felt fulfilled. And so I took those two things and I made sure that whenever I gave him a referral for business, I made sure they were clear about this is the pricing, it's not negotiable, this is what it is. He is worth every penny. And I built up the value so that no one would even think of questioning his pricing structure. By the way, he wasn't overpriced. He was either the same as or less than his competitors. And then the last piece was around that client compliance. I explained to them, you know, he's somebody that can be picky. I am dying to work with him more, but he can afford, because he's got such a great service, to choose who he works with. And one of the ways that he narrows down who and how he chooses to work is if you're not going to take his advice, he's not going to work with you. And I said it just there in a little bit of a cheeky way, but I explained to them that client compliance thing and how it might break your heart when you know that this could help and you're not willing to listen. Now, if there's an integrity issue, say for example, we're prescribing a chemical and the family really wants to go natural, then at least there's a conversation. This doctor wasn't not open to that conversation. He was fully open to the conversation. But he wanted to make sure that when he left the home, if this is what we said we would do, and we as a family agreed to do this, that that is in fact what's going to happen. And so I made clear, setting him up, that that was the expectation, and they might get fired as his client if they didn't do that. The other thing that I did that is above and beyond, and that secured that relationship for life, I think, is I then would follow up with the family to say, great, you had your first appointment with the doctor. How did it go? What's your treatment plan? Now, sometimes I was already there, so I could hear it for myself. But if I wasn't, I did this follow-up call. What I did then is took down what their protocol was, what treatment, what suggestions the doctor had given them while it was fresh in their mind. And then I became an accountability partner for them. And I kept them on top of making sure it was happening. And if it wasn't happening and they had some objection, then we got back around to the doctor and we talked about it. We didn't just let it fall off and let that animal degenerate without the doctor knowing that his treatment wasn't being executed on. Now, talk about adding value for somebody. What's in it for me? We just help that veterinarian feel more fulfilled at work. We continue to support the lifestyle he's chosen for himself that is doing this very special work, and having the vacation and the travels and the fun that make it so he can keep coming back to it every day. So when you say, what's in it for me, it might take a little homework on your part, but if you can figure out how you can add value to their practice, I guarantee you they're going to want to do it again. It's dog training 101. Reward what you want more of, right? Okay, so we are just about out of time today. I hope this has been helpful. I see a couple of emails have come in. If you have questions, you can give me an email directly, Robyn, R-O-B-Y-N, @animalrn.com. In last month, we talked about Into the Light. It looks like everybody got that delivered, but I know a couple people had technical problems. So if you had any problem getting the Into the Light free download, let me know. I will make sure that you get that. So Into the Light download. Next month, oncology. So we're specifically next month going to be talking about people, research, and some books and whatnot that you can use around pain in oncology, as well as other common symptoms, so to speak, that would be managed to be a part of a good hospice plan. All right, I'm Robyn Kesnow, RVT. It's been lovely chatting with you. See you soon.